So I want to talk about this idea of letting go. In a lot of spiritual teachings, letting go is often mentioned. This because when we are, you can say, lost in the paradigm of notness, we are clamped onto it. We are in clinging on to notness. And so when we let go, then the notness is not anymore entertained, and where we land on is automatically yesness. Because yesness, isness is our natural state. That's why you can say we don't have to go chase it. We don't have to go get there and arrive at there. It's already the natural place. Arrivedness, quote unquote, is already the natural state, you can say. It's just that we blind ourselves from this and clamp on the bubble world paradigm of notness, you see. Imagine an umbrella and the handle at the end is notness, right? And imagine the umbrella closing. It's clamping on to the notness, the ends of the umbrella is grabbing on to the handle, right? So there's contractedness, there's holding on, there's clamping on to that idea of notness, hence the consequent contractedness. Another analogy would be like, let's say someone with floaters and they are holding on to, let's say, a rock at the bottom of the sea. The moment they let go, then they automatically float. It's kind of like that. It actually takes effort to hold on to notness. It requires energy and effort, to keep holding on to notness. It's kind of like contracting a fist. It requires effort than just it being in a relaxed state, the natural state. This also reminds me of the Zen phrase, taking the backward step. It's taking a step back from notness. You can say that buying into notness is that forward step, like the umbrella, quote unquote, taking the forward step to clamp on to the handle. And so it's only a matter of taking a step back from it, you know, unclamping from it, unzooming, from it and releasing it, basically. That is why you can say that we are actually the ones who stepped away from isness. We are the ones who, quote unquote, abandoned it, but not really, experientially. We are the ones who decide to make the effort, you can say, to clamp on to illusion, to grab hold of it. And so it's really also up to us to let go of it, to take the step back from it. So you can say that the ego's desires, all those true nature qualities, are already the natural state. It's just that when we buy into notness, it's as if we withhold ourselves from it. Just like the umbrella, whose quote unquote original state is that quote unquote expanded state. But when it clamps on to the handle, then it contracts, right? It's like it's withholding itself from itself, you know, it's withholding itself from the goodness, you can say. It's the one. It's the one buying into. It's the one entertaining the handles, the notness, right? Or like the person who's holding on to the rock at the bottom of the sea. He's the one preventing himself from naturally floating. He's the one who keeps entertaining the rock, holding on to it, and thus not allowing himself to breathe, you know, to be in that quote unquote expanded state or non-contracted state. And so again, it's not about chasing or trying to get there or trying to grab or possess or get a hold of whatever the ego desire is. It's actually the opposite. It's the backward step, not more and more forward reaching. That's what you did already with the notness. We've already reached forward to grab hold of it. And so more and more forward step, more and more reaching, more and more grabbing. It's the quote unquote, it's the wrong way. It's like the umbrella will not get back into its natural state by more and more contractedness, more and more reaching, reaching for the handle, right? The way is to let go, which is basically ceasing buying into, ceasing entertaining the idea of notness and taking our power back, really. Because we are also in that, you know, narrowed, contracted state when we put the power out there. When we say, this is to blame, you are to blame, so and so is to blame, the world is to blame. We place the power out there and we say that that particular external element holds, you know, holds what I'm looking for, holds my wholeness, holds my well-being, holds my worthiness, etc., etc. We make it as an excuse to buy into notness. You see, it's like we decide to continue clamping on to notness and making this whatever particular element as an excuse, projecting responsibility onto it when we were the ones who decided, who makes the decision. We are projecting responsibility onto whatever external element, and deciding that that is the reason that I'm clamping onto notness, that I'm giving my allegiance to notness. When in fact, it's us who created that equation. You know, we can let go anytime. We can cease entertaining notness or cease clamping onto it anytime. So yeah, a significant part of awakening really is growing up, you know, ceasing to be a toddler and blaming everyone and everything else. Because the idea of this is the culprit or this is the one to blame also came from us. You know, we created that as, again, some kind of excuse to keep holding on to notness. And thus, We are empowering that certain external element instead of ourselves. We're giving that power away to that. We continue to quote unquote charge it, you know, instead of recognizing this power that is actually in our hands. And it's up to us where to direct it, you can say. And so taking the power back is also taking the responsibility back. We are responsible for our experience. We are responsible where we give our entertaining to. If we give our entertaining, meaning we entertain notness, then that's no one else's responsibility but ours. We make the decision. Another phrase that comes to mind is the Christian phrase of absolving sins, or Jesus saving us from sins, or saving the world from sins, or taking the sins from the world. That is really a profound and true statement. It is taking the sins from the world. The world does not have the power. It's not responsible. It's not the one that's making me feel this way. It's quote unquote absolved of sins. I'm the one. I'm the one buying into notness. I'm the one giving my power away. I'm the one deciding to still make this particular element as an excuse to clamp on to the rock at the bottom of the sea, you know. And so, in the same way, when we want to quote unquote be awake in this world, like Jesus, we have to quote unquote cleanse the world of sin. If that is our intention, it's all according to our intention. So none of what is being described here is about being moral or in that kind of moralistic sense. And if that is the case, then people are now free to wreak havoc in the world, etc., etc. That is not what is being pointed at here. This doesn't cancel out, common sense, or this doesn't cancel out practicality. And this doesn't mean condonation or condoning destructive acts in the world. It's not placing power, quote unquote, out there. And again, taking responsibility back, taking the stakes back from out there to here, if your intention is being awake in this world, basically. If the intention is to be in a disempowered, victimized state, well, then we also have the choice and option to put responsibility out there and have that as an excuse to cling on to notness, to cling so hard to the rock at the bottom of the sea. You see, so it's not like this is better, this is worse, this is whatever. According to you, according to your intention. It's a neutral choice, you can say. Which one do you prefer? But of course, giving power away and clinging on to notness, the effect of that is not goodness, misery, dissatisfaction, disconnectedness, etc., etc. But if someone, quote unquote, prefers that, if that is someone's intention and preference, then, then by all means, But if not, then there is also the equal choice to cease, to cease clinging on to the rock, clinging on to notness, and cleanse the world from responsibility. Take the power back, we can say. And again, this is not like a canceling out, a canceling out of common sense, a canceling out of right action, a canceling out of whatever. In fact, the more that you can take action, the more that you have the power to do what is necessary and appropriate, you can say. These pointers are not an invalidation of the fact that you can say perpetrators did the acts that they did. It's not an, invalidation or canceling out of their deed. And so if appropriate or legal action is required, then that that will be the case, right? So you can say that they are responsible for their action of their deeds, but you don't make them responsible for how you choose then to live life. You cease making them the culprit or excuse, let's say, for you deciding to buy into notness, right? Another thing I'd like to mention is that it's not just quote unquote external elements. This also includes internal arisings, you can say. So it's also taking responsibility back from internal arisings. Let's say an urge to lash out arises. If you say that that urge, that internal arising has the power over you, well, then you'll come from a place of being disempowered and you'll be pulled like a dog on a leash by that urge. You'll give in, right? You'll just succumb to every urge, every whim, every reactivity. So this is also taking responsibility back from internal arisings. So let's say the urge to lash out arises. Doesn't mean you have to just succumb to it. It doesn't have that power unless you say so. Unless you say that that has the power and I have zero power. And if that arises, then I'll be that. I'll give into that. I'll react that way. And so again, it is ceasing making these internal arisings as an excuse, you know, for you to do whatever, for you to not choose empowerment, for you to not choose agency. It's ceasing to play the game of being at the mercy, being at the mercy of these urges, being at the mercy of these internal arisings. Same with other internal arisings, like let's say sense of boredom or anxiety, dissatisfaction, etc., etc. It's up to you to give your power away to these internal arisings. It's up to you to decide then that, oh, this means my wholeness is attacked. Oh, this means I have to cease being happy. you know, you decided on that. We're the ones who decide that this particular internal arising or emotion or thought or whatever is the culprit. It's the one that blocks me. It's the one that's responsible for me not feeling what I prefer to feel. And so, again, it's cleansing the world of sin, including the internal world. It is not making them as an excuse to buy into notness, you see. So let's say a thought arises, right? It is merely a suggestion, it is merely an offering. If the offering of that thought is notness, well, then it's up to you to buy into it. It's up to you to quote unquote say yes to it, to give your consent to that whatever offer that notness thought is suggesting, you see. So yeah, basically it is ceasing allowing ourselves to get lured, to get tempted into buying into notness, buying into untruth, illusion, Maya, right? Ceasing allowing ourselves to be tempted, circumstance or thoughts. You can say those can be lures, for you to buy into notness. And it's up to us to bite it. It's up to us to decide to hop onto that and allow ourselves to clamp onto notness. So you can say that that's what this world offers, the offer of notness. And that's the thing. It's up to us how we use it. Let's say an external element or an internal element. How are you going to use that? Are you going to use that for you to get sucked into the bubble paradigm of notness? Or are you going to use that as a reinforcement for your preference, for you to stand your ground in yesness, right? And it is really empowering, to still choose your preference despite all the quote unquote temptations of notness in the world. So it has its use, you can say. How can we know this empowerment or this strength, you can say, if it weren't for these offerings of notness, right? It serves a purpose. It's a perfect setup for us to learn and exercise the idea of intentionality, right? As a general example, if it's our intention to come from a place of wholeness and joy, well, then we let go of the notness of it. If that is our intention, right, then we do what must be done, which is cease holding on to the rock, the rock of notness at the bottom of the sea, because that is our intention. So you can say that it's by way of letting go, you know, it's like when something is our intention, then how we quote unquote go about it is via stepping back or unclamping from the notness of it. It's withdrawing our investment, you know, from the bubble paradigm of notness, so that these energy or these funds are now back in reality, in the yesness of your intention. And so, again, to reiterate, it's not more and more forward step, right? It's not more and more swimming deeper and deeper underwater. What the ego is looking for is actually the case, like the natural relaxed state. So it's not more and more clamping of the umbrella, more and more diving and holding on to a rock underwater, but it's more of a backward step. The way forwards is actually taking the backward step.